Good evening. The webinar will begin in a few minutes. Please take note of some housekeeping items on your screen prior to us getting started. All participants' video and audio will be muted this evening. Please take a moment to rename yourself for the scholarship drawing at the end of tonight's presentation. Good evening and welcome to the Senior Year Planning Webinar to kick off the 2021 Fall Essentials Series. My name is Nick Boudre. I am the supervisor of career and college programs here at St. Clair County RESA, also representing Blue Water College Access Network this evening. We have a special night in store for you. We have 5 of St. Clair County's high school college advisors from our local school districts here to help you start your senior year planning this fall. We're going to cover everything from narrowing your college list to the college application process to financial aid, scholarships, and paying for college. This is a very exciting time in your life, from everything from homecomings to proms, the senior year of your athletic events, extracurriculars, clubs, and soon graduation day. But by getting started now and starting your plan tonight, you will find yourself at a competitive advantage, successfully enrolled in your post-secondary education or training after graduation, and ultimately landing a career in a high-demand, high-paying job. Special note that I always like to make is that everybody should know that almost every career nowadays requires some form of post-graduation education or formal training resulting in a certification, credential, or an academic degree. Our format this evening will be a 30 to 40-minute conversation with our panelists, followed by a question and answer segment where the audience can ask our panelists questions via the chat feature at the bottom of your screen. Please feel free to ask questions throughout the segment. We just won't read them to the very end. Without further ado, I'd like to invite my first guest this evening. He comes to us from Yale High School, Stuart Massa. So Stuart, if you can unmute your screen and your microphone, and I'll get you spotlit here. Stu, how you doing tonight?
I'm doing well. How are you doing?
I'm great. Well, Stu's here to talk to us tonight about making your college list. So Stu, let's start talking about that. It's end of September, tomorrow's beginning of October. What should they be doing at this point in their 12th grade year?
Well, seniors should be researching the programs or majors that they're interested in. They should be researching colleges, whether that's by themselves, whether it's with family or with their college advisor. And then ultimately, they should be putting together a list of colleges that they will apply to as soon as possible.
Very good. So I'm going to backtrack a little bit, and I may do this throughout the night because you hit on a lot of great points there. So you said researching colleges and universities that they're interested in, and maybe some majors that they're interested in. Where would they do this research at? You know, what's some areas that they can start looking at these colleges and universities?
Well, if they're looking at colleges, a great website to use is Prep Scholar online. I like to just type in Google Prep Scholar and then the university. So say it's Western Michigan, you would just type in Prep Scholar Western Michigan, and they'll have a whole page detailing admissions, detailing the programs they have, stuff like that. And then if they're interested in exploring careers and degree pathways, a good website to do that is Zello. It's spelled Xello. You can go on there. It's sort of like Career Cruising was. You just go on there and type in sort of your interest, and they'll line you up with majors or programs you might be interested in.
And all students at Yale High School, as well in St. Clair County, have a Zello account, correct? Yeah, very good. And so they can access that very easily to look for colleges and universities. Okay, so I'm a 12th grade student, Stu, at Yale High School. And I'm looking at colleges. I know the names of them. I found a few names that I'm not really sure, you know, they're new to me. My list is long. You know, I'm looking at a lot of them. At this point in my 12th grade year, you know, where should I start narrowing that down to? What number should I try to get to right now as we enter October?
Yeah, I like to see seniors apply to 5 to 6 schools. And then I sort of categorize those. So ideally, they would apply to 2 safety schools, 2 target schools, and 2 reach schools.
Very good. And I'm going to stop you right there. I'm going to ask you to talk to us a little about that, because that's a big topic of making your list. So you have 2 safety schools, 2 target schools, 2 reach. Let's start by defining each one of those for our audience and telling us which each of those actually is.
Yeah, so a safety school is a school that a student is, you know, almost certain to get into. You know, nothing's guaranteed. However, it's extremely likely that you will be admitted to this school. A target school is you can reasonably expect to get into. And then a reach is a long shot. You know, it's probably pretty unlikely that you'll get in, but it doesn't hurt to try.
Okay. So just to recap a little bit, a safety, you have a good high chance of getting in. And then targets are some that you're interested in. Then reach is a long shot, but you're going to go for, you know, if you get in, that's a great accomplishment, but it's a little beyond what your expectations are. So speaking of expectations, what are those things that determine a safety, a target, and a reach? What are the factors that I'll be considering when I'm identifying a school as one of those 3 categories?
Yeah, so we determine a school's category by comparing the student's academic profile with the university or college's academic profile. So we'll look at a student's SAT score and their GPA, and then we'll sort of line that up with the school's median or average SAT or GPA of an admitted student there. So if a student's academic profile is higher than the university's academic profile, that would be a safety school. If the profiles are about the same, maybe a little low, a little higher, that would be a target school. And if a student is below a school's medians, that would be considered a reach.
Okay, very good. So we're looking at our GPA and we're looking at the SAT. And, you know, right now the SAT, and we're going to hit on this a little bit later, that it's, you know, this class may not have taken it, or they have taken it, but some schools are optional, some schools are asking for it. But either way, where can I look at this? Where's this information? You said the academic profile of the student and then the school's profile. Where would a school list that?
Yep. So a lot of schools will list it right on their website. If you go on their admissions pages, there will probably be a tab that says like incoming class profile or student profile. And a lot of times they'll list, you know, average GPA, average SAT score, stuff like that. But then you can also, like I said, Prep Scholar, if you just Google the name, again, say it's Western Michigan, you can scroll down the page and it'll show you the average GPA of someone admitted there and the average SAT score, as well as the school's acceptance rate. Yeah, so like I said, Prep Scholar is a great resource for looking that up. It's all pretty much public knowledge on the internet.
Okay, that is great. Now, so I'm going to play devil's advocate here. Is my only thing that I'm looking at is GPAs when I'm looking at colleges and universities, or should I be considering other factors when I'm narrowing my list down to 5 to 6 schools?
No, yeah, you should definitely look beyond the numerical. While the numerical is very important, your GPA and your SAT score are very important. There are, a bunch of other factors you should be considering. An important one that seems obvious, but a lot of students really don't consider it is, the major or the program you're interested in. If you're interested in engineering, you should probably not be applying to a school that doesn't offer engineering. So you really want to start looking for those programs that offer what you want. Another thing to consider is cost, how much you want to spend on your education. Schools do differ in the tuition rate there. Another one to sort of narrow down your list is location. If you want to stay in state, or you want to stay close to family, then you probably shouldn't apply to the University of Colorado if you're never going to move there. And then another way I help students narrow it down is I ask them to consider, sort of the environment that they want to study and live in. Whether that, is that a close-knit school, is that a small campus, or is that a really big 40,000 students type of school? Because ultimately, where you go is going to be your home for 2 to 4, maybe even 5 years. So you really want to fit in there.
That's a great point. And you're kind of alluding to the next thing, Stu, is, how important is a college tour and a visit once this list is made to really feel out those schools?
Oh, it's extremely important. Not only for the resource that a tour usually gives you, which is a lot of times there'll be an admissions representative who can answer all your questions, who really knows that campus and that school. So you can really lean on them just to give you that information, but also just to get a feel for, the campus, the environment for the students. You might go on a Friday or something, you get to feel the atmosphere, you get to, see the excitement in the students' faces, you get to pop in on a class. So it's really important in narrowing down that list and seeing where you fit in.
All right. So I'm going to sidebar just a little bit. So we got a list, 5 to 6 college and universities. We're looking at, location, commute, size. We're narrowing that down. I possibly am going to go visit these schools. But in St. Clair County, we have a tremendous opportunity here. And it's right in a lot of our students' backyards. And we have our own community college, St. Clair County Community College, otherwise known as SC4. And actually, for the audience, the 5 or the 6 of us were all there this morning and meeting with them and looking at all the new additions that they did to that campus. Why would it be a great option, in addition to the targets, safeties, and reach schools, to apply to SE4, a community college right here locally, if I'm not planning on staying and I'm not planning on going to a community college?
Yeah, I get students ask me this question all the time, and I tell them, well, you should apply to SC4 anyway, because the application, one, it's free and takes less than 5 minutes to complete. You know what I mean? It's a couple minutes out of your day. And ultimately, because it's nice to just have that in your back pocket, just in case, because things do change. You might get that award letter from your dream school in April, and it turns out it's going to cost way more than you thought, or maybe your financial situation changed between when you applied and when you were accepted. So like I said, it's just nice to have that in your back pocket, just in case.
Very good. Well, Stu, they gave us a lot of great information about making a college list in a very short amount of time. And I just want to recap, a little bit what you said. And if I left in 5 to 6 schools, look at targets, look at safety schools, look at reach schools, look beyond the GPA once you have that identified, and definitely apply to SE4. Am I correct?
Yes.
All right. Well, you actually segued very nice by talking about majors for me for our next guest. So I'm gonna move on over to Hunter Anthony, who is the college advisor at KPAC High School. Hunter, how are you doing this evening?
I'm doing well. How are you doing?
Good. Thank you for joining us. Hunter's going to talk to us a little bit about career interests and majors and how that plays into the college decision process in selecting a post-secondary education or training, much of what Stu started to talk about and how much that plays into making this very important decision. So much of like I asked Stu at the beginning of our conversation, what should seniors be thinking about right now in the fall of their senior year in terms of career interest, majors, and how that plays into their college decisions?
Absolutely. So Stu touched on it pretty briefly there too. He said, he mentioned engineering. If you want to go into engineering, don't go to a school without an engineering program. And it's important you don't have to know what you're doing, but if you have an idea, if you want to do something in the sciences, then you should look at a place that has a more extensive science program. instead of going to, say, an art school or something like that. If you know that's not a career path you want to go down, it's really important to really get yourself started down the road, even if you don't know exactly where the road is going.
Very good. And so why is that important? So if I'm looking at college and universities, planning out my post-secondary education and training after graduation, but I'm only considering colleges and universities as a school, but not looking at the majors and not looking at the end game of the degree. Why is it important to have your career interest play into that planning?
Well, just because I'll use Michigan State as an example. Michigan State is obviously known for the university. However, they have a very well-established agricultural tech program that leads to a lot of certifications. So it's important to not look at anything that says college or university is just strictly you're sitting in a classroom for 8 hours a day, because it's not like that. It's really important to have just kind of an idea of what you want to get out of your college experience. So if you want to go there and you want to get a certain certification, it's important that and you want to get that certification down the line, it's important that the place you're going can help you get to that point, whether you get the certification there or it puts you in a position to get that immediately after leaving.
Very good. And Hunter, and you and I've talked about this before, I've heard this in terms of, it's okay to transfer, and it's okay that this decision is not final. But if you do the research like Stu you're talking about right now, and you have a list and you continue to narrow it down and your career interest plays into this, you're saving money and time. What do they mean by you're saving time and money if you do this extensive research and planning prior to selecting a school?
Absolutely. So while it is possible to transfer, the transfer process can kind of be a hassle sometimes. And also not all credits will transfer. So you could spend X amount of dollars taking 8 classes at just a small college that you didn't necessarily know why you went there. You just went there to say you went. And then you could try and transfer somewhere else where you're really interested in the program they have, and only 6 of your classes transfer. You don't get that money back. But obviously what you learned in the class is still there, but at the end of the day, you don't get that money back. And it really helps to make sure where you're at is where you really want to be.
And ultimately too, if you lose those credits, you're essentially losing a semester, even more than that.
Yeah, absolutely.
Okay, very good. So we know how important this decision is, and having the career interest and process in the decision making, the decision making and the plan. When should seniors and their families get started with this plan?
As soon as possible. The best day to start was probably yesterday. So the next best day to start is today. So you can really never start this too early.
Very good. And that, I love that phrase. You might want to patent that, Hunter. It's pretty good. I think the other advisors may use that this year as well. So let's shift a little bit of gears here, and so maybe, a student or a family in the audience or in the high schools, maybe a little bit stressed and saying, I don't know what I want to do yet. I don't know what my career interest is. Is there a one size fits all approach, or is there a model for each student to kind of follow?
No, absolutely not. There's no one size fits all. For me personally, I grew up in South Florida. I lived there my whole life, and I knew I was about 9-10 years old. I knew I wanted to go to Michigan State. I knew I wanted to graduate from Michigan State, but I understand not everybody has that same drive to go to a certain school. They don't want to be somewhere in particular. So it wouldn't make sense for me to just convince every student, yeah, Michigan State is where you need to be. It really is different for everyone. Everyone has different interests. There's different personality types. You really need to find a place where you're comfortable, and you should only apply to a school that you could really see yourself being at for 4 years, regardless if that's a safety or reach or a target.
Very good. And in terms of career, and thank you for sharing your experience. I think all of us, and here tonight, we're probably in that same boat. What did that process look like for you when you were, trying to search out what you wanted to do and what you wanted to major in, and ultimately land a career in that field?
Absolutely. It's funny. I started out when my freshman year at state, my mom had big dreams for me, as all parents do. And she wanted me to be a doctor. So I started off pre-dental, and I found out very quickly that I just didn't like it. And from there, I changed my major to Spanish. I wanted to teach Spanish. And after a few semesters, I decided that really wasn't going to be for me. That's not what I wanted to do. And then I ended up, I took a history class one semester. I loved it. I've always been really into history. So I majored in history, and I finished my degree out with that. And now I'm here. So.
Very good. And what are some factors students should be considering then for their career interest? Much of like what Stu talked about in making a list. Mm-hmm. What factors should they be thinking about right now for careers and majors?
Well, I think the most important factor to consider is just that you like what you're doing or not. It's really important that you put yourself on a path that you do something that you're motivated to do, because eventually everyone gets burnt out, and it's a lot less likely that you get burnt out of something if it's something you're truly passionate about. But also there's any financial reasons. If you have family obligations, you have to stay close to home. Stu talked about this earlier. These things happen. You never know. And it's really important to understand that things happen. So it's important to realize that you may have responsibilities. And I'm not saying don't go away from home if that's not what you want. By all means, if that's what you want to do, you should do it. But if you have to be home twice a week for a family function or a family obligation you can't miss, it wouldn't make sense to move across the country, kind of a thing.
Yeah, very good. Some very good points there. And so you talked a little bit about the unknown, and you're really unsure of that. And I asked you this question when we were getting ready for your segment was, can a student attend a college university if they're undecided? Saying, I don't know what I want to major in, but I know this is where I want to be.
Yeah, absolutely. I would almost, if they don't have a path, and if they love the school they're at and they know they want to be on a certain campus, but they're not exactly sure where they want to go with that, I would absolutely encourage a student to apply undecided. Because with me personally, it was taking a history prerequisite that got me to really decide that I wanted to finish out with history. I really enjoyed what I was doing. But that could be a kinesiology class for someone. That could be an intro to chemistry class for someone. It's different for everybody. That's, like I said earlier, there's no one size fits all kind of a thing. And it really helps expose you to a bunch of different opportunities that you could pursue.
Very good. And that's another topic you and I did discuss. And I asked you this about applying to a community college such as SC4 here in our county, here in our neighborhood, and it's a tremendous school. Prereqs, how does that play into the process? And then what does that do for time and money?
Absolutely. Most schools, as far as I know, require some sort of classes outside of your major, outside of what you're going to, outside of what you're specifically going to get an education for. And they do that because they want well-rounded people to come out of their universities, well-rounded students. Obviously, you could be the best chemist in the world, but if you don't know anything about how to write a paper, it doesn't matter, because you can't write a dissertation on your research, kind of a thing. And it's really important, and it all ties together, even if at the time it doesn't necessarily seem like it does.
Very good. Well, thank you so much, Hunter. We're going to move on to a little bit different, but I do want to just add one point, because he was a special guest last year for us, a student that graduated from a local high school and is at a university. And he was, much like Hunter mentioned, undecided. He had a couple career interests. He knew the two that he was interested in majoring in and getting a job in one day. So he narrowed his college list down, and he actually got to a school that offered both programs. And he went into his freshman year majoring in a major. And by the end of his freshman year, he transferred programs and was then enrolled in this B major for his second year without losing time or money. That was a lot of strategy that he had in his planning. He did a lot of research to do that, but he set himself up for success. And when you're thinking about your list, and you may have multiple interests for careers and majors, that's something to think about as well. Thank you so much, Stu and Hunter. That was a very good presentation on getting that list ready and taking careers into consideration. Our next guest is coming to us from Memphis High School. Let me get her spot lit here. So we have Felicity Roman Pelvis from Marine City High School. Felicity, how are you doing this evening?
I'm doing good. How are you doing, Nick?
I'm doing well. Well, Felicity, we talked a little bit about the list and career interest and how that plays into that decision-making process.
Mhm.
And you're here to talk to us about the actual process and the applications themselves. So,
Yep.
rolling up our sleeves and getting those applications done. So we're at the end of September. Tomorrow's October 1st.
Mhm.
Deadlines and events should students be aware of tonight, starting tomorrow morning when they enter their schools?
All right. So the first one starts tomorrow. So on October 1st, that's when the Fafsa opens. And if you don't know, Fafsa is the free application for federal student aid. And this is going to be a very big resource for financial aid for any institution. And then the whole month of October is Michigan College Month. And this is really the time where I would recommend students to apply to any colleges that they're interested in, because this is when a lot of colleges have free application codes and their applications are totally free. So, and then also November 1st is the early action deadline for most colleges. So this is when, like, especially if you're interested in any colleges, I'll definitely recommend applying within October and definitely before November.
Well, thank you so much, Felicity. Those are so many great dates and deadlines. I need to backtrack a little bit here to review it because those are very important for our audience.
Mhm.
October 1st, FAFSA, we have Brandon. That's going to be talking a little bit about that here in a couple more guests. But so the college month in Michigan, and you said there's a list of colleges and some waivers. What does that mean for students as they're making their list? How important is that next month, October, is college month?
I feel like it's really important because some students I know worry about paying for the applications because they can be like $20 to $65 for each application. If you're applying to many colleges, like many students do, that's just going to rack up. So this is really a good opportunity, and it was made, this event was made basically to help those students and to help incentivize students to go to college who might not have the means at first to do that, to like even apply.
Very good. And where can I find what schools actually are participating in this event for the next month?
Yeah, there is a website called MCAN, if you didn't know. So MCAN is the Michigan College Access Network, and they have a lot of great resources in general, just about different kinds of colleges and whatnot. But they have a list on there that say which colleges are going to be participating in this, and then if there are any specific codes that you need to insert for these applications during this month. Are you going to post that sometime after the Zoom?
I am. Thank you so much
yeah.
for leading right into that, Felicity. I appreciate that. Yes, we will post that. And actually, we will be sending that out in an email to all the guests this evening, link directly to them. They took the time this evening to be here with us. So we'll get that link and send it to them as well. And then we'll post it on all of our pages as well. So. Well, I want to also touch on another item that you brought up in your first answer there, early action. So specific deadlines throughout the admissions process should students and their families be thinking about from early action? And I know there's a couple other ones.
Okay, so early action, as I mentioned before, that is typically around November 1st. That's typically when a lot of colleges have this deadline. And early action, I would really recommend applying by this if you're very interested in any colleges. As I mentioned before, that whole month of October, there's going to be a lot of free applications and a lot of colleges are participating in this. And then also another benefit of early action applications is that you get your admissions response earlier. So whether or not you've been accepted into the institution, and you have maximum financial aid considerations at that specific institution. So the way I kind of think about it is if you apply by rolling admission, no, by early action, I meant that you're basically at the front of the line of the college's like big pile of money. So they can like give you the most financial aid that you may need and they might consider you for, rather than if you did it later.
That is a tremendous answer. And it is a great, I love that you brought up financial aid and getting to the front of the line, not only for the admissions process of the school you're interested in, but also getting that lump sum of financial aid that's there waiting for the students. And they want to give that to the students and help them afford college. So what is the regular decision deadline? What's a typical college date for that?
Yeah, so a regular decision application deadline is typically around January 1st. And this is just like your typical like regular decision. So if you applied by the January 1st, this is for most colleges, you'll typically hear your answer back within like February or March. And then, like I said before, still in the line, closer to the line of maximum scholarship consideration.
But also in terms of using the analogy once again of a line, that line may be longer, and that list of applicants may be larger than at the early action. Very good. And then rolling admissions, you already mentioned this once. What does that mean?
Okay, so rolling admissions, this is basically you apply whenever you want and everything, whenever like you get to it. So there's no deadline whatsoever. But as I mentioned before, I would really highly encourage applying by either that early action or regular decision deadline, just because if you're doing it like really late in the semester during rolling admissions, you might be put on a wait list at that specific college. So that means you might have to wait like an extra semester to actually attend the college.
Good. And so I love the deadlines and the events that you just gave us. Those are very important for the application and the admissions process. Let's talk a little bit of what an application looks like. If I want to apply to a college or university or trade school, what's on that application? What are they looking for? Yeah.
So other than your typical like transcripts and other general information like your name, your address, all that, there are 3 other main aspects to a college application. And mind you, this is just the general things that they look for, and it really varies by college of like what exactly they require for their application. So one of them is your SAT and ACT scores. Second one would be letters of recommendation, and the third one would be admissions essays. So going over SAT and ACT scores, actually most colleges are test optional. So what this means is that you have the decision of whether or not you want the colleges to consider your test scores during the admissions process. And this does not penalize you in any way if you just say, no, I don't want you to consider my test scores. So, and it really depends on you and whether or not you want to submit them. So that's something you might consider. And of course, it really depends on the college and whether or not they require that or if they are test optional. Going over letters of recommendation. So these are typically from your teachers, coaches, etc. And really pick people that you have a good relationship with and that can vouch for your character. And one tip I would give about letters of recommendation is make a rough draft of the main points of what you want the person that you're having the letter of recommendation be by, what they want to say about you. So maybe you really want them to point out how you're a really good team player, or maybe that you're very hardworking. And by doing this and making a rough draft of this letter of recommendation for these people, it just makes their lives easier and yours, because then they basically have all the points and what they want, like what you want, and all they basically have to do is sign it. And then for admissions essays, typically they're like 250 to 650 words, and the prompts vary by college, and most of them are very similar and open-ended for these.
And that was going to be my next question, Felicity. What are the essays? And the question prompts, and what advice you give students? Because essays can be scary. A lot of families kind of get scared when they see, oh, they're requiring an essay, and then they get anxious and the stress builds up with the application process. What advice can you give seniors and their families about these essays?
Yeah, so what I would give advice about for essays is try brainstorming and writing a snippet for each of the prompts and see which one seems the most engaging to read. Because these admissions reps are going to be reading hundreds, if not thousands of essays. So you really want to make yours stand out as much if you can. And then also looking at the college's website, and usually there's a tab or somewhere you can navigate to see their mission statement. And this is basically how the college says what they really value in their students and on their campus. And I would highly recommend looking at that, where you can incorporate those themes into your essay. And just another note I want to make about these essays, just because I heard this around and heard many students do this, please don't re-traumatize yourself. So you don't really need to write about, like, sorry about my dog. My dog.
Oh, you're good. My
going
dog's
off.
in the room too. You're completely
Yeah,
fine.
sorry about that. Yeah, but like with these essays, you don't have to write about like a really tough time in your life. This is a really common myth about these essays, that like if you write the saddest thing, like very tragic in your life and how you overcame it, that's just going to make a really good essay. Honestly, this is just going to harm you more than benefit you. So, I mean, if you would like to write about a tough time in your life and you feel comfortable with that, you're more than welcome to do that. But I don't recommend students to like re-traumatize themselves with something that is very hard that they've experienced.
Yeah, and you and I talked about this when we were preparing about, telling your story and why it's important. What you've been, it may be the adversity, but it also may be how you had success and participated in, and how you maxed out your time and effort to have success. And then also your future. I always hear, tell your story, because ultimately you want them to accept you and fit their college or university or trade school, correct?
Correct. Yes. So the main point of these essays isn't necessarily to see like how great of a student you are or anything. It's really a chance for these admissions people to see who you are as a person and to see what kind of characteristics you have and what kind of values you hold. So it really gives you a glimpse, like gives them a glimpse into who you are. And it's kind of like how I think about it is a conversation between you and the admissions person, where you're just telling them a story of your life to just give them an indicator of who you are.
That's really well said. I love that conversation with the admissions team and ultimately decision makers. One last question for you, Felicity. Can students reuse essays and for multiple applications when they're looking at the 5 schools when they're narrowing down their list?
Yeah, of course. You can always reuse the essays as long as they like fit in with the prompts, because each colleges have different prompts for what they require for the essay. But yeah, you're more than welcome to use the same essay for however many colleges you apply for. In fact, I would recommend it just because it just relieves a lot more stress on you trying to worry about whether like making all these essays in between school and other personal things you're going on.
And you can tweak them a little bit too to fit the university and college find too.
Yeah, of course.
Well, thank you so much, Felicity. That was a great overview and actually behind the scenes kind of look at all the events and important dates with the admissions process. We are now going to shift gears once again to the paying for college and FAFSA. And we actually have Coach Wardlow here. Brandon Wardlow is coming to us from Port Huron High School. Brandon is in his second year and is going to be talking to us about FAFSA. Brandon, I'm going to ask just right away, did you win?
So we ended up tying, and excuse my voice if it's a little hoarse and maybe a little hard for me to present. but I coach a freshman football team, and we're only allowed one overtime. And we ended up being tied at the end of that one overtime. So it was a hard fought battle. The boys fought real hard, and I was super happy with the outcome, given it's a good team we played.
Good, very good. Well, that sounds like a great game. Well, let's get into this. FAFSA. What is FAFSA? Every senior in their family hears this. They hear it throughout high school. Talk to us about what that actually is. What's the acronym stand for?
So FAFSA is the free application for federal student aid. And the FAFSA in general is a lifesaver. So the key words in those is that, first off, it's an application that's free. And that free part is huge. So there's absolutely no reason for someone to be worried about filling it out, because the worst thing that could ever happen to you is you fill it out and maybe not end up using it. But from my experience, most students, after we file the FAFSA, it ends up being used.
Well, that's a great thing. So it's not binding, it's an application.
Absolutely.
All right. Well, I'm going to jump forward to some of my other questions, because you just hit on a great point of what the application does for students, and they ultimately end up using it. So what does the FAFSA provide students and families with?
So the application itself is to see if you qualify for something called a Pell Grant. And that Pell Grant is financial aid or free money from the government for you to be able to go and use towards education after high school. So that Pell Grant, depending on how much your family qualifies for, and there's all kinds of formulas and things that go into that based on income and other things, how many people live in your household. But what that money is able to do is it can help you pay for, tuition at a school. If your tuition is covered, you have the option of helping it pay for room and board. There's always trade school opportunities that do accept FAFSA. Last year, I sent a couple of students to barber schools or trade schools with technology programs and things like that. And FAFSA covered all of their expenses. So that's why it's so important that we take advantage of this free application to find out if we qualify for some of this money.
It's tremendous. So Pell Grant, and they don't have to pay that back, correct?
Absolutely. So being a grant, they don't have to pay any of it back. So when we talk about financial aid, there's a couple different routes that we can go. We can go the route of grants and scholarships, two of which that we would never have to pay back. That's money. I like to call them gifts. Grants and scholarships, I call them gifts. And then we have the things that we would borrow. Those are loans. So, and there's different kinds of loans, but when we talk about loans, those are things that we would have to pay back. And there are certain loans that when you apply for the FAFSA I call them better opportunity loans, because those loans are typically subsidized loans, which the easiest way to remember this is I'll tell you, there's unsubsidized and there's subsidized. The unsubsidized, super uncool. We want to stay away from those. So the subsidized ones, they're not the best, but they're somewhat cool. Okay. Because what subsidized loans are is it's an opportunity for you to take that loan out and have no worries about accruing interest while you're in school. So if you take out a $5,000 subsidized loan, at the end of your 4 years of college, it's going to be $5,000. And that won't start adding interest until 6 months after you graduate, versus an unsubsidized loan, which the second you take it out, it starts adding interest. So with those unsubsidized loans, I might take out $5,000, but by the time I graduate college, I'm looking at a $12,000 loan now because of interest rates and things like that.
Well, that's some great information, Brandon. So it shows, I fill out the application and it says maybe I qualify for the Pell Grant. I love this. I love that look at it, somebody else wants to help out with your presentation. The dogs love to be a part of tonight. That's so great. So it looks at grants, and it also talks about loans that I qualify for. What else does it tell me? So I applied to 5 to 6 schools like Stu and Hunter talked about. I go through the process that Felicity just laid out, and I fill out those applications. So I submit my FAFSA. What's a FAFSA going to tell me and my family?
So a FAFSA, actually, the number that it gives you is the EFC, and that's the expected family contribution. That means how much money that the government deems as expected of your family to help contribute to the cost of college. Now, what colleges do when we get that and we add them to our FAFSA is they take that EFC and they make a determination for how much money you might be qualified for in terms of those grants and maybe some different scholarships. Different EFCs between, say, 0 and a certain number might qualify for certain scholarships versus some that are higher. The higher the EFC, the more your family would be expected to contribute. But essentially what it's telling you is that, you know, this expected family contribution is going to help me understand my award letter later on once I get accepted into those colleges, universities, and once we start looking to see like what school is offering me more money, what school is going to be the best option for me financially, and things like that.
So ultimately, Brandon, you're telling me that by filling out the FAFSA, that it's going to not only tell me the money that may be gifts for me to afford college, it's going to tell me the loans that I qualify for going to college, but then it's also going to tell the schools that I applied to and hope to get into and attend what my family's expected contribution will be for each of those college and universities.
You hit it right on the head, Nick.
All right. So that's it. And why is that important? Why is that important for this process as I'm going throughout my senior year?
So as we start to get ready for our transition from senior year, I should say, transitioning from senior year to college, there are a lot of things we have to take into consideration. And everyone else who's presented so far has done a really good job of explaining, making sure that it's a right match and fit for you, or that the school, you know, when you get there, it has what you're interested in. That you have a well-rounded support system there to kind of help guide you into those career paths that you might not know about yet. Just getting started on the application in general. And for some students, it's hard for them to even apply to a school until they know for sure that they might be friendly to their situation. So I've had students who they held off on applying to a school until after they completed the FAFSA. And then once they got their FAFSAs back, they're like, well, you know, this was a lot different than what I expected. I'm going to apply to the school because now it's more affordable. So these are more things to keep in mind as we maybe make our initial list and we have A, B, and C school that we know we want to go to, or we're pretty sure we want to go to at least. But D school was in the back of our head and we didn't apply because we thought it was out of our price range. Now, when our FAFSAs come back, maybe D school is more affordable than we thought. So this is kind of something that throughout the course of the year, we're able to really to build on those lists and expand on those lists and find out what's more affordable for us versus, you know, what we thought was affordable. It opens up opportunities, and now we can start to look and say, hey, this might actually be the best option for me versus what I originally thought was going to be the best option for me.
So it plays a huge factor in this decision-making process.
Without a doubt.
All right. So, and you've seen this, you know, going into your second year, and you've seen, and you mentioned it with your seniors and how that played a huge role in where they went off to this fall and are at right now. You know, what were some successes that a student did with this application that,
oh man,
what should a student in the audience and their families right now be doing? What should they follow that they did so well?
Let me tell you, just filing it in general. As I took and I sat with a couple of students, the best conversations I had were about information they were giving me post going to college and post having their financial aid come through. And I had one student in particular that comes to mind. He's attending Oakland University, and we sat and we did his FAFSA. I mean, he had a special circumstance where, you know, he qualified for the full Pell and he got some good scholarships. He worked really hard and got his GPA up his senior year. And actually Oakland owes him money now. So he's going and he's not paying a dime to go to school. They actually owe him, I think it was like $1,300. And he sent me a screenshot of it. He emailed me a screenshot of his financial aid award. And he said, I don't get it. Why is it in the negative? Why does it say negative $1,356? And I'm like, well, that's because they owe you $1,356. And he's just ecstatic at that point, finding out that after his Pell Grant and his FAFSA and after the scholarships that he was awarded because he worked so hard, that he was actually getting paid to go to school for what he dreamed of doing at the school that he dreamed of going to. And I have other students with similar situations who told me that college was unaffordable, that they wouldn't be able to do it. And I said, hey, let's sit down and fill this out anyway. Who knows? Maybe you get some money. And those same students that were so sure that college is unaffordable are either going to some place like SC4 for free now that they have the tip possibly, and they also have FAFSA. Maybe they're getting refunds too. And I have students that are doing things like those trades, like the barber school I mentioned over the summer. We had that one student who was dead set. He was going to New York to go to school, but then when it came time to go to school, he was like, I don't actually think I want to go to New York. I think I want to go to barber school. So, and we were able to take the FAFSA and be really flexible with that and have all kinds of opportunities for him to have his schooling paid for.
Yes. And that's the thing. It's free. It's not binding. You don't have to commit to the loans. It is a free application that only brings you benefits and ultimately is part of the process.
Absolutely. And one thing about FAFSA that I will throw out there, and I don't mean to cut you off. So if you get awarded a scholarship from a college or university, a lot of times, this is the kicker that I usually get students with, they won't release those funds to you until you file a FAFSA anyway. So you might not be getting any money from FAFSA, but you might have gotten that really nice academic scholarship from Michigan or Michigan State that they're not going to give you until you file one, because they want to see that commitment. They want to know that, hey, this student really is on top of their game. They're doing all the things, all the steps that are important to their senior year. We're going to award him this scholarship, but upon completion of his FAFSA, we will release those funds to him.
So Brandon, and I'm going to ask a question I know the answer to, because this is a very important topic for seniors and families. So not only does a FAFSA help me and my family in pursuing a college, university, or trade school, but then that school or university or college needs that FAFSA to give me their scholarships.
Yeah.
And that's, I don't think a lot of people know that. And that's why I wanted to re-ask that question, because some students don't know that they're counting on those scholarships coming from state universities and state colleges, but they don't understand that FAFSA is required first before they can actually award them that money.
Yeah, it's worded really oddly in some schools and some places, and I know policies are different everywhere. But for the most part, until a student has filed that FAFSA, or at least has a FAFSA on file, even if they maybe didn't do it with parent information versus with parent information, they're still going to hold those funds until that FAFSA does come through.
Very good. Well, Brandon, I'm going to ask this, and I'm probably going to say it after I ask it, and you answer it. When does this application open and when does it close?
That opens up at midnight tonight. So at 12:01, you can hop on the FAFSA. It opens up on October 1st, and it closes on March 1st. Now, I say this with a soft March 1st because there have been situations where it's been known to extend, and last year was a very special circumstance where it got pushed back. However, from my understanding, I think we're looking at a harder date of March 1st this year. So October 1st to March 1st is that important timeline to make sure we're filing the FAFSA. But if you ask me, I mean, midnight's only a couple hours away. If you're not doing anything important tomorrow morning, I say hop on that FAFSA as soon as it opens up and get it done.
Very good. Well, thank you so much, Brandon. And I'm going to just add a little bit before we go to Emily. And one of the advantages of getting it completed at October 1st is much of like what was talked about earlier, is getting in line with the admissions process. Is you're getting in line for the grants and the free gifts, free money, so to speak, that is financial aid that will be awarded to you for a college or university. So a lump sum of money, they're looking to give it out. The sooner you can get this application done, that pot starts to go down. And the more that students that they award it, it continues to go down. So if you wait close to that March 1st, some of that financial aid in terms of grants maybe already be used up. So over the next few weeks, over the next couple of months, when we're still in 2021, it's very important for you to complete this FAFSA form. It is a process. It is not a one click. Students need to apply, parents and guardians need to apply, but it is a process that these 5 college advisors and all the counselors in your local high schools are there to support you throughout this process. And together we can get these applications done so you can maximize your financial aid. Well, another form, as I go here, and Brendan hit on it for the transition, they're doing so well at that, is scholarships. And next up, we have Emily Tenniswood from Algonac High School. Emily, how are you doing tonight?
I'm doing great. How are you, Nick?
I'm great. Emily, you are not a rookie on these events that we have. I thank you for coming back. You're a tremendous guest, and your expertise tonight is how we're going to finish this conversation. So your topic is going to be scholarships and paying for college. And Brendan already talked about this a little bit on how that can play in the career and college decisions. So what advice would you be giving seniors at this point of the year in terms of scholarships?
Really, at this point in the year, I would say not to stress about scholarships. I think as Felicity mentioned, the most college applications for that early action deadline or for rolling admissions that you want to shoot for is at the end of October. So right now is the time to be focusing on getting those college apps submitted, done, and really be focusing on that. Also filing FAFSA. But because the FAFSA deadline is not until March, you can do that at the beginning of November. And then that's really when you want to start shifting gears and thinking about paying for college once you have your applications all squared away.
Very good. So I get my applications out there. I got my list. I got my 5 to 6 schools. I apply, and I get my FAFSA application done. And I'm really on top of things here in October, November. When I'm starting to be interested in scholarship, that's all right. I get those motion sensor lights.
Yeah.
So I look at FAFSA and I got that done. And now I'm like, now it's scholarship time. Where do I get started with that process?
Yeah, so for all St. Clair County students, the best resource is going to be the Community Foundation scholarships. That opens in January, I believe. And those are only for in-county students. They're really great. The applications are not that bad. It's one application that you send out to all of the scholarships that you apply for or qualify for that. Through that. The other thing is going through your institutional scholarships. So at the schools that you apply for, a lot of freshman merit scholarships are offered based on your application for admission. So there's not anything extra you need to do. They just disperse those based on the students that they have that apply. But for a lot of schools, and this is something that's kind of I think a well-kept secret is that there's oftentimes an additional scholarship application that's intended for current students, but incoming freshmen can still apply. So for example, when I applied to Michigan State University, I received some merit scholarships through my application for admission to MSU, but then they also had a scholarship application that was for students in the College of Natural Science, which is what I was going to do. So I filled that out, applied in January, I think, and then actually ended up getting a scholarship through that. So I would really just say focus on institutional scholarships for the colleges that you're applying for and local scholarships. There also are a lot of online resources for national scholarships like College Express, Niche, things like that. Definitely apply to those if you see something that would work for you. Those are a little bit harder to get just because of the sheer volume of students that are applying for those because they're national. So it's everybody in the US can apply for those for the most part. So yeah, I would just, really focus on the local scholarships and the colleges that you're focusing on.
In the local scholarships, where would I find those in the high school?
Come talk to your college advisor.
There it is.
Yes, just a little plug. We have all of the details on all of the local scholarships. It's also all on the St. Clair County Community Foundation's website. The application is pretty easy, and then you can apply for those scholarships even as I think a first or second year college student. So I have a couple of friends that didn't get a scholarship through the Community Foundation their senior year, but they did their freshman year in college.
In the scholarships themselves, are all the process for applications the same, or what does a typical scholarship application look like?
So they all have their little quirks, but for the most part, you're going to have to provide obviously like your name, some demographic information. And then typically scholarships will ask for a little bit about academics. Some of them are more focused on like academically achieving students. So they want to know your grades, your test scores. You might have to send an SAT score or AP IB scores, that kind of thing. Some scholarships may not ask for that at all. And instead they want you to talk about, a time that you failed and how did you reflect on that or things like that. So it's really depends on the scholarship. Yeah.
And it's very important for these scholarships and their committees that you follow the process to do the research of what the actual application's asking for, because you're essentially being awarded money.
Yes. Just to
Very-
jump on that too. So you definitely want to stick to the directions for the scholarships, but especially for scholarships through colleges, if you see one where you're like, I fit about 4 out of 5 of the characteristics that they're looking for, but there's one thing that doesn't really apply to me, still send an application for it, because you never know, somebody who might not have filled out the application, you were the only applicant, bingo, there you go, you get the scholarship. So
and it's worth the time to do so. Well, and you and I had a great conversation about this. There's a few myths out there about scholarships and the process. Talk to me a little bit about those too.
yeah, so one of my kind of love-hate relationships is with the expression that scholarships are free money. They're free in the sense that you do not have to pay it back, which is amazing. But they cost a little bit in the sense that you need to do some legwork to figure out scholarships that you are eligible for, first of all, because some of them do have financial need aspects to them. And then also you need to do the work to be putting out an application that is really a good reflection of who you are as a student, and is the kind of the best representation of yourself.
Very good. And then to play right off of that, I've also heard that applying for scholarships can be a full-time job. Is that true?
No, not at all. Not at all. I think it's probably like a low hour commitment part-time job. But I know a lot of my students are concerned because, they go to school all day, but then they're working 20 to 30 hours a week. And it is kind of scary to be concerned about, oh my gosh, I have to fill out all these applications to get this money for school. And it's really not that bad, especially once you've applied to a couple. If they require like an essay or writing, you can recycle a lot of the things that you're writing. So that helps a lot. Really, an hour or two on the weekends, November through February is like enough time. It's not, you don't have to be slaving away from, 6 p.m. to midnight every night trying to do your scholarship applications.
And now, and with the scholarships, what role can scholarships play in paying for college? And then the second part of that question would be, how was that process? How did that play into a role for you going off to college?
Yeah. So scholarships are huge. For a lot of students, that ends up being the deciding factor to where they go to school. It's important to find a school that's a good fit for you, that has programs that you're interested in. But if you can't afford to go there, then obviously that's not going to work. So for me personally, the number one reason why I ended up at MSU was because they offered me the most money, like plain and simple. I had been accepted to U of M and Kalamazoo College and was really interested in programs at both of those schools. But the level of financial support that they offered me was nowhere near what MSU was offering. So that was really the thing that tipped the scales for me to choose MSU.
So much of like what Brandon was talking about, award letters from your FAFSA, scholarships also play into the decision-making process.
Yes.
There's another topic you and I talked about recently as well in terms of paying for college, and it's very important, is AP classes and IB classes. Is that important for paying for college for seniors?
So at the end of the day, if you spend the time and effort to take an AP or an IB course, and then you do not take the exam at the end of the year, you are throwing away literally potential of thousands of dollars. When I was in high school, I took a lot of AP classes. At my high school, we were required to take the exams. And luckily I did pretty well in the exams and actually was able to transfer about 45 credits, which was a whole year off of my education. So at state, that was about $30,000 that I saved. So you do need to pay for the exams in some cases, but some of the schools will cover part of the costs for those exams, and there are also fee waivers. But I tell every single student that if you're in an AP or an IB class, take the exam. Even if you don't think, I'm going to completely bomb it, still take it. You never know what's going to happen.
Yeah, well, this is just, it's very important for scouts paying for college, taking your AP exams, that's all going to add up throughout the year. And I want to go back a little bit to scholarships. do they all come out at once in my school? Do they all come out, or is it kind of a rolling thing? And is it something that students and families need to keep track of and throughout this year?
Oh yeah, definitely. It's not all at one time. A lot of schools will they'll do a couple in November when they get those first applications in, and then there's some in January, February, and then right before decision day, they're like, okay, I have to send out tons of money to these students that I really want to go here. So you really just need to be checking your email often, checking your applicant portal, because schools will send you stuff a lot of the time. For me, I know from MSU, I was receiving letters about financial aid and scholarships pretty much from when I submitted my application in October until I committed in May. So it really is, you just got to stay on top of it. I always recommend making like an Excel spreadsheet and just having your schools in there. And here's, my applicant login for my portal. And here's, how much money they're offering me in grants, loans, scholarships, just so you have all that information in one place and it's easy to get to.
Well, that's some great advice. Thank you so much, Emily. I know we're getting short of time here, and I just think that was a tremendous explanation of paying for college and scholarships this early in their senior year. Well, that concludes our evening discussion with our panelists. And you may be asking yourself, where do I go from here with all that information that was just presented to me? Well, here's a sneak peek. That is the fall 2021 senior checklist, and it will be publishing this on Monday for the rest of the county and to all the high schools and the counselors and the college advisors for you to get your copy. We also will be sending this tomorrow in a follow-up email to yourself. But really what this is this summarizes many of the things we discussed this evening to ensure that you stay on track over the next few months. And I promise you, if you go through this, these are the items that the college advisors really went in depth with this evening. If you can get this checklist done before the turn of the year, you are going to be at a very competitive advantage for after graduation pursuing a post-secondary education or training. We also aren't done after this evening. Next up, this was the first of the Fall Essentials webinar series. We are going to go down the route of career exploration and help you find your passion and find that major that you're interested in and ultimately the career so that you can identify the school or the university or trade schools that will be the next step in your life. So on October 20th, we have our trades and apprenticeships to really talk about skilled trades and what apprenticeships look like if that's something you're interested in. And then November 18th, we have nursing careers. We'll continue these career exploration events throughout the winter and spring as well. To backtrack a little bit, we have our very first live FAFSA workshop, completion workshop on November 4th, and that's for parents only. What that's going to be is it's going to be a virtual event, much like this webinar on Zoom, where the parents can log in and get assistance from the college advisors and other financial aid professionals that will be joining us to help you with your application, ultimately get that application completed this fall. For more college and career information, you can also visit our website at bwcan.org. And here you will find a recording of this webinar in the next couple of days, as well as virtual events and college stories that have been made for your viewing. These videos and webinar recordings are also on the Blue Water College Access Network YouTube channel that's new for this school year. And after tonight, you will also be signed up to receive the BWCAN or Blue Water College Access Network monthly newsletter that gives you updates on events like this and the upcoming events, as well as information and resources from St. Clair County RESA, BWCAN, the Community Foundation, and our state partners. You can also follow us on social media at our Twitter and Facebook account, where we put a lot of the resources and information and updates out on. And last but not least, we have our Community Foundation Scholarship to end the evening. We'll be awarding one 12th grade St. Clair County student that's in the audience this evening with a $500 scholarship to put towards funding their education after graduation. We have amazing partners at the Community Foundation, are very fortunate for them to support our events. Before we get to that this evening, we need to complete a very short survey as we prepare the scholarship that I will put in the chat. It's just a few questions. If you can go down to the chat button at the bottom of your screen and click on that link and fill out that quick survey, we can get down to the scholarship portion of the evening. All right, well, hopefully everybody has that link up and completes that survey. That'll help us throughout the school year as we continue these events. A special thank you to the college advisors and our panelists this evening. They are extremely busy with the start of the school year, and for them to take time out of their schedules, we really appreciate your time and all your expertise helping the seniors and their families. So thank you very much. I'm going to pull a name out of the jar here, and this student will receive the $500. And once the name is called, we'll send you an email tomorrow with all the paperwork and everything that needs to be submitted so you can get your scholarship for after graduation. So tonight's winner at the senior year planning webinar is Grady Butler from Port Huron Northern High School. Congratulations, Grady. And we'll be sending information to your email tomorrow morning. Thank you so much for coming. A special thank you to our audience and students and families. And I hope you have a great school year, and we'll be seeing you at our next event later on in October. Thanks a lot, panelists. Have a great night.